Pushkin.
How are you, my friend?
Good, how are you?
Good.
So thank you for doing this.
Man, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Oh, man. Your new record is gorgeous. Your new record for Blue
Thank
Note
you.
is gorgeous.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it really is. But I think Don and I had talked about maybe starting a little further back.
You start wherever you want. I'm all yours.
I watched a little bit of Jules at 8.
Did you really?
Night. Yeah. Which
Lord.
the whole thing's not.
No,
available,
I don't even know how to find it.
There are little excerpts up there,
Yeah.
and you get such a unique blend of real sweetness and unbelievable talent. I don't know. Have you? This is a movie that was made when he was
7, 8 years old.
Yeah. Someone shot it. Who made the documentary?
It's a director named Mark Becker, and he was at Stanford as a film student, and he had this. It's kind of interesting because it really wasn't about me. He just wanted a movie about a young musician or talented person who is straddling the world of childhood and some sort of skill. And so he called us to do it, and my parents and I said, no, absolutely not. You know, because I really keep in mind I'd only been playing guitar for 2 years. I wasn't like an established musician, but he heard of me through some channel, who knows what, and he was very persistent, and eventually we said, well, hey, this is clearly more about you than about me, and that's kind of good in a way. So that's why we proceeded. But yes, there was this film made.
So you're clearly a child prodigy. And there must be an incredible set of expectations and pressures that go along with that.
Sure, absolutely.
How did you deal with that?
Well, it's so cool that you frame it that way, because I think so often there's something blinding about really anybody, but especially young people when they exhibit any propensity, is that you get blinded by that. It's dazzling, and it's easy to forget that there's emotional infrastructure that needs to be built and supported, and just to even understand your own progress and understand your worth is not maybe tied to your progress. And in some parts of life, you might be really advanced. Other parts of life, you're really at the beginning. All these considerations, I think they reveal themselves, but it's easier to see that when you have a supporting family or teachers or community. Now, at the time, I remember getting a lot of attention, but I never once felt overwhelmed by it, and I attribute that to my parents. They were, when my father was a young boy, he was a child prodigy as a visual artist, and he had a one-man show in Southern California, and we used to have letters from, he'd send a portrait to Jacqueline Kennedy, and he'd get a letter back saying thank you, or Norman Rockwell, and so I think he saw, and at a certain point as he got older, he decided not to pursue art because I think that part of it freaked him out, is what I imagine. So when it came to me, I think there was already a certain defensive barrier. No one could really get to me as a kid. I practiced a lot. I did my thing. Every so often I'd come up for air. But I was unbothered by it. Now, as I became more of an adult, I could see it in the rearview mirror a little differently. And I think what helped me was that I didn't make a record under my own name until I was about 21, 22. So from 5 until 22, I was just a guy practicing guitar, playing people's bands, and it was great. I think I needed that many years to just kind of develop, and then when I hit it, I really hit it strong. The last thing I'll say about that, I know I've said it before in other forums, but I'm of the generation right before the internet being so prevalent in young people's lives. So there was a documentary made about me, but there was no YouTube. There was no clips of me anywhere. So I was a secret. What went out was even in the documentary, I don't actually play guitar in it, which is interesting. I don't play, there's a moment where I play a scale, but that's kind of wild to think of that. I'm not playing. It could be all bogus for all anyone knows. But thank God I didn't, so I don't even know what I sounded like at that age, really.
You sounded awesome. You were playing.
I moved my hand. Yeah, I do this thing for a second. I would say that's all I knew. That was the whole riff.
Well, I think that's one of the things about child prodigies is that I've seen a lot of that.
Yes.
But very few make the transition into being adult artists.
Yeah.
And I think that, a lot of them can do
Amazing.
an Eagles solo
Yeah.
perfectly, you know,
Yeah.
and that's amazing to see a young kid do that.
Yeah.
But I didn't sense, even when I heard you, whatever you did in the
Yeah, that thing.
documentary,
Yeah.
it didn't sound like anybody else. You weren't copying Eric Clapton or anything. You had a voice, and I think
Thank you.
that's the rare thing is developing your own voice, right?
Well, I do believe that, especially from where I sit now. I was talking to my wife Margaret about this. Was it last night? But both my parents possess this ability to be. They're fans of art and music and life, right? And so they would talk about things I remember as a kid, and they would analyze people, not in the way of, okay, this person's great, you should be like them, but they would say, this artist must think this way about themselves in order to get this result that you're hearing. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's very new. So if as a kid we would listen to Jim Hall or something, just because it was in the house, those records, I just remember having those conversations with my father saying that, oh, he must have an acceptance of his own sense of humor and phrasing because that's what I'm getting from this. And I took it for granted, but I realized it's really rare. Usually we kind of say, well, people become icons, and then it becomes almost impossible to develop a voice because you just aren't that person. Your body doesn't work that way. Your brain doesn't work that way. Your heart doesn't work that way. You didn't have those parents, you know? But I think everything was broken down as if you can understand your relationship to yourself, you'll have access to what you can offer most genuinely. And for that, I'm so grateful. And I think that is the root of kind of developing a voice on an instrument. Also, I'm a terrible mimic. I couldn't sound like anyone if I tried. And I've tried. I remember my wife on that, she's a brilliant, she can hear something, repeat it, make it her own. I really can't, and it's good. It's a good handicap to have.
that tradition you're talking about, though, of like there's icons, and then that you kind of steep yourself in them and sort of become like them, and then maybe hopefully if you're lucky, find your own voice after. That's a particularly strong tradition in guitar, and young people learning guitar and playing guitar.
Oh my God, yeah.
Did you have moments early on where that? I mean, did you have at any point, even if it was short, a more traditional trajectory of like, I'm learning the blues now I'm transitioning to jazz?
Well, I consider myself, it's a great question. I consider myself such a history nut. You know, or maybe more accurately, I believe I find great support in knowing that I'm far from the only person doing this. You know, it was here before me, it'll be here when I'm dead. So I'm just passing through, you know, yes, I think there were times where I would investigate history. You know, okay, I really want to understand T-Bone Walker, and I really want to understand Muddy Waters, and I'm not going to learn what they do, but I'm just going to, I guess, cultivate a certain reverence through listening, playing along with records. Same with jazz, same with different musicians, but I was always under the belief, I remember this so vividly, thinking that here's my dream. I want to be right where I am with you right now. This truly is my dream with all of you. And I want to be myself, being a part of a creative project. That's what I want. And I recognize that in order to do that and feel comfortable, I need to deal with a lot of things that are really no one else's business. And that's scales, that's theory, that's the understanding the guitar. I need to get this sorted so that our time isn't spent kind of being distracted by something I don't have together. That was always my view. So I remember practicing and acquiring information from that perspective. I got to acquire a lot so that I can just be available emotionally. Because we all know that when you're just inundated with stuff you have to learn, and like you're saying, these towering icons over us, you're fumbling to just get through. And that can really plummet your sense of self, you know? And I just need to nix that in the butt. There are things that are knowable on the guitar, but the good stuff is the unknowable stuff. But there are knowable things. I know where the notes are, and I know how to hold a pick. Can
you explain what the knowable versus unknowable things are?
Sure. Absolutely. It's a little bit. I feel silly doing this in front of all you guys, but you know, even knowing where the pitches are on the instrument, I've always felt like that's massively overlooked. Okay, you have all these C's in there, and unless I change something about the tuning or take a string off, those notes will be there for me. Now, what I found, and that's true of all 12 pitches, what I've found though is there are so many hurdles as guitar players we get into. I was there for a long time, that are attributed to knowing 30% of the neck, 40%, 50%. I know where 3 of the C's are. I really shouldn't go up there. I should go over here instead. That's a very simple example of kind of doing your homework as far as just map it out. Not with a system. It takes a week. You know it. It really does. That's always how I felt about it. Another example of it, I've had a fascination. You're really interested in this?
Yeah.
I'm kind of shocked.
As a failed guitar player, yeah.
You're not a failed guitar. Well, I've been fascinated by this this thing about mastery on the guitar, right? Because we're all interested. All of the people, you see the people and go, "Wow, they seem really good. They know something I don't," and I feel that all the time with my heroes. However, there are things. When you're good at something, there's attributes that also kick in. Like if you're you can use a fork and have a conversation. That means you probably know how to use a fork. There are these you have bandwidth for other things. So I remember as a younger person, I was really thinking about that on the guitar. Despite all the things I know I don't know, what's something I can do that I just feel I could do in my sleep? You could wake me up at 3 a.m. with a fire extinguisher in my face and say, do it. And I can say, okay, I can do it. And a really good example would be probably playing a C major chord, The reason I say that, I probably learned it really early on. And when I do it, I can talk and do it. I can breathe and do it. I feel good. I feel good and I can do it. Now, to me, that's somewhat of a litmus test. That's a metric for what it's like to have a mastery over a little domain on the instrument. Now, the next thing would be to tackle something that I have less of that experience with. So if I would do that, and then I'd work on, I don't know what I'd work on, something difficult. And immediately I would just say, what has left me? I can't really breathe when I'm doing it. I'm really anxious. I'm kind of fumbling. My tone, okay, dipped, okay. So let me go back to the reset. And it'd be ridiculous if you saw me, but I would keep going back to that kind of touchstone.
Wow.
And if you do it enough, you know how for me at least, I felt like I was able to get those difficult things to feel good in a way that I had faith in. It's very hard to have faith in that you're good at something if you're not used to that good feeling. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of
interesting. You knew you had the hard thing when the hard thing kind of felt
like the thing that I considered good, not what someone else considered good feeling.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's funny to say that because I'm not terribly stubborn. So this isn't a protest. I really don't have a dog in the race. It just made sense to me. And I think that's how my father looked at teaching me guitar when I started too. It's all from him,
That's an incredible that's a really sophisticated way of approaching guitar.
That my parents are deep. No, but it's beautiful because I have seen it pop up in other you see this,
yeah.
You see that. It's the same with our health. You have to know when you felt good to know when you don't feel good.
Right.
You have to it's a play of oppositions.
With the touchstone change, for instance, it wouldn't always be the C, right?
No, it could be anything sometimes, but you have to go to something that it feels too simple to be legitimate. This is one of my favorites, once something difficult feels as comfortable as just strumming a guitar open with nothing, that's when we're kind of getting close to a sense of feeling masterful.
Wow.
It's certainly been working in a nice way, and maybe it'll change,
Do you have variations, on different days? Like some things seem harder?
Oh, 100%. That's such a good point. Yeah, I feel that in the realm of time feel. Like I notice that depending on the season, a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, some things will just feel not accessible. I can't settle into this beat, or I can, but it's going to take me an hour, and then I can feel it. Other days I'll say, okay, I can kind of access that physically too. I'm not a big believer at this point, at least in warming up on the instrument. There was a time where I did. Speaking just from my own experience, I think there's kind of I like the way I sound when I'm not warmed up sometimes. Yeah, I trip over my hand, but I also have to deal with that like a human being rather than just, this feels great, I can do anything I want. So I would say it does change as far as the physical time feel. I like playing a lot of improvised music. So usually the cure is just start playing. You and I have talked about this, Don, before, about the kind of the virtuous world of playing longer. You know, if you're looking for, I want to sit down, play for 5 minutes and be amazing. That's great. But what if you sit down for 45 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and you don't stop? You will hit walls, and you also, in my experience, resolve them musically rather than divorcing them from the act of playing. And so usually when something's off, I just play more.
I've heard that you'll play like 90 minutes sometimes over just the same changes.
Absolutely.
Purposefully play 90 minutes
Oh,
over.
you get so, it's kind of, sick of yourself, and then you get happy, and then you get, it's a journey, you know. But long form playing has become that's a big part of my life. And if I don't have the time for that, I've noticed lately I'm okay just not playing. Do something else long form. Just be alive long form, But just try not to break every part of life into these little kind of life hacker moments.
There's a great line in Jules at 8 where your dad's talking, and he's talking about people saying, "Well, don't make them practice all the time." He said, "No, I try to make them stop practicing."
It was true. They'd be like, "You have to really stop. It's been 8 hours. You don't get." It's funny like that though. I feel lucky because I teach a lot. Not much lately, but I've taught a lot. Culturally speaking, there is so much pressure nowadays in the educational system that I remember even as a kid, it wasn't the same. And I really have looked back on it. Play all day because it's fun was kind of okay. But I've noticed that rhetoric is not the same. If you see, well, that's great that you can play, but you can't just play. You've got to be working on something. And that has to be something that you can show to other people so we can tell you if you're getting better or not. I somehow avoided all of that.
Yeah, that's good.
So I feel lucky.
Well, how'd you fare in school? You went to Berkeley, right?
I went to Berkeley College of Music. I loved it. Well, at first I didn't, and then I loved it, I as a teenager, I started playing with Gary Burton. And
before you were at Berkeley?
Before I was there. So, but Gary used to be, he ran that school for so many years, and he's a part of it for 50 years. So it wasn't a big leap to say, well, when I get old enough, I want to go there. Gary's kind of my guy. So I went and I did the thing. Okay, go out, do the class, whatever. And I really didn't like it. I was kind of miserable for the first semester. And by no one's doing other than my own. I realized that I'd gone from being in this musical space to music school, which those who are familiar with any kind of art school, they kind of, they have to make it such that everyone has access to information. So you go from being the special person in your community, to being one of thousands. You go from being the person in your bedroom who's learning songs because you're just fascinated to, I've got homework now and I haven't touched the guitar in a month. I thought something's off, So I called the president of the school, Roger Brown, who I really adore.
Right to the top.
I just said, look, I don't want to waste anyone's time. You're so gracious to let me be here, but I'm going to tell you this isn't for me, and I'm going to move on. And I left that in a voicemail. I realize now, he called me back about 10 minutes later. He said, Julian, what is up? And I said, well, here's the deal. I know if I stay, I can cultivate what I'm doing already. There's jazz guitar paths. I want to get my butt kicked with what I don't know. He said, what is it? I said, classical composition, classical piano, really deeply get into counterpoint and study with Mick Goodrick, the master. And he said, we will figure this out. And I ostensibly became wrapped up in something they were rebuilding, which was what they call an artist diploma program. Juilliard's got, a lot of schools have them. It's kind of like a master's degree. And he said, we'll frame it academically so that your last, 10 years of touring with Gary Burton, we'll consider that like an undergrad. But you have to tell us what you want to get out of this. And I said, I want to make my first record. That's my final. And I need about 3 years to study before I want to make the record. Wow. And it's just, it's all this stuff is loose. It's not life or death. And they were also had an open mind, but I took it very seriously. I studied with them. I did everything we said I would do, including making my first record, Sounding Point.
Wow.
And I loved it. And there were other students who I hipped to this program because they were coming in and they needed something similar. So it was a good thing for all, I think.
That's great.
It was really cool, really cool.
How did you connect with Gary?
He saw me on the Grammys. I was playing on this telecast back in 2000, 2001, and they had this moment, it took 30 seconds of kids playing jazz, and I was one of the kids. Similar to the documentary we spoke of earlier, I was invited and said no, because I had no interest in it, and they were really persistent. And I said, okay, so do the thing. And I got a letter maybe a week after it was televised from Gary. And he said, my name's Gary Burton. I was in the audience that night. I've got a gig at the TED conference in 6 months. And back in those days, it was not what it's become. It was a little different. It was in Monterey, California, in this hotel, and it was small and still very exclusive. And they hired Gary to do a thing about intergenerational something or other. And I was the younger generation. So he said, you want to be my younger generation for this? I said, sure, And it went so well that he asked me to then do a cruise on the Queen Elizabeth II, the one from New York to London, which had it was great. They would have I don't know if they still do it, but these jazz festivals, and it was Gary's band, Tommy Flanagan's trio, Bud Shank. It was fabulous. Whoa. Terrible experience on the cruise because we hit a storm, but like 50-foot seas, and the piano was rolling off the stage. I'm talking bad. We got through it. Here we are. But it went so well that Gary was basically laying out these crumbs. If this goes well, then I'll ask you to do this. If this goes well, and then after that, he basically said we should make a record, and then that started about a decade straight of working together.
So you made Gary's record.
Yeah, I made Gary's record shortly after that, which was, I forget the name of it, but it was with Makoto Zone and James Genus and Clarence Penn. It was great. And then he started this Generations band, which is some other younger musicians, and then we did another few records. It was so impactful. I mean, Gary Burton is the maestro.
How surreal were these moments? I mean, not only doing a jazz festival in the Queen Elizabeth II and joining Gary Burton's band, but then playing, like, you skipped over it, but just being invited down to a Grammys telecast at that age must have been insane. And I saw an amazing clip of you at 9 playing Maggot Brain with Carlos Santana, it was wild to me that not only are you playing with Carlos Santana on stage at that age, but then you're playing Maggot Brain.
Yeah, dig.
And your licks
How
are
did
like,
that happen, man?
they're like amazing. They're not like,
You're kind. I appreciate it.
not corny licks. They're like good. You're like, whoa,
I appreciate that. I don't know. I don't know the first. I don't know how any of this. I don't know. But I have to say, I sound so. I mean, I feel silly saying this, but I'm saying unless I do believe those were different times, and I think there's a different version of it now. But the Santana thing, my father worked at Fog City Diner in San Francisco, and he had someone came in who he was friends with, and he said, "I know Santana, and I heard your son's playing guitar. They were friends." My dad said, "Yeah," and he said, "Well, Santana's playing at the wherever." In 2 weeks, you should just show up. They usually they get there by 2 p.m. That's all the information we had. So we got in the car and we drove there and showed up at 2 p.m.
Were you worried that you were going to be?
No, I was. Well, the funny thing about it, this would have been when I was 7, and we drove. We pull up, go backstage. Okay, this was also before 9/11 too. I mean, there's big cultural things were just a little.
Security's a little less.
No, you go. Okay, that's where's Carlos? He's in that room. Okay, so my parents, I knock on the door and he says, "Oh, you're the kid I heard about." Come in, we sat and we played, and that night that was the night where it was Jeff Beck and him were doing this tour. But check this out. The best part about it to me was he said, "Do you want to play tonight?" And my parents and I just kind of intuitively you looked at each other. No, I didn't come to play in front of 20,000 people. I came to meet the master. That's the point.
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, no worries. We'll enjoy the show. And we come here every year. So when we come back, you should just come again and bring a guitar." So great. So with no communication, a year later, almost to the date, we drove up, got there too, knocked on the door. He said, "Oh, you came. Do you have a guitar this time?" "Yeah." "Okay." And then that's the video you saw.
Wow.
But and it was surreal, but also, I don't think I was in an environment that hyped anything up. It also didn't push me down. And I've known people who have that figure in their life who says, "Don't get too comfortable, kid. This is you still got to." There was none of that good cop, bad cop, macho stuff.
It was real,
It's just like, I don't know, just respond, be present. And music, at the end of the day, as we all know, is a healing force of the universe. It's what we're talking about is very generous. It's very loving. It's very supportive, and it protects us. I believe that to my core.
Sound like Carlos Santana right now.
Yeah, right. Well, but that's who I look to. I mean, these cats, and as a young person, I was around people who were talking about what was behind the door. Being around Higgins, being around Billy Hart, being around Charles Lloyd.
Unbelievable.
I mean, it was. I knew that it wasn't your hands moving. It's this other thing. And it's for all of us. It's not just for a few. It's here to make us happy and healthier. So I would say that's a backdrop that probably informs all of this. So the Grammys, it is what it was wonderful, it's fine. It got us here today, and that's kind of all I can say.
If you do all that when you're younger, does it make you a little more fearless as an adult?
I think it can. I think there's two ways it can go. In my case, I think it let the air out of the tire in a good way to say, you can. There's varying degrees of success as you look at it. You see, But at the end of the day, if you're in a room with people sharing in the same thing, you're all kind of equals in that moment. And I think it cut down on a lot of the intimidation of, I can't do that, or I can't play that venue. I shouldn't be on the stage because I have no experience. So I do think that's carried me through. So, hey, we're just all kind of circulating in the same world. Now, I've seen it go the other way, where when you're around at a young age, you feel like if you do anything that's not the Grammys, that's not major, if it doesn't garner a ton of attention, then you failed. I don't believe that for myself, but I feel for those who do, because you must feel like, hey, I was playing for 20,000 people. Now I'm playing for 100 people trying to get my band off the ground, and no one cares because they don't know, they haven't heard it yet. That's unsettling.
Yeah.
But worth it.
Another thing that strikes me is that guitar playing can be a really solitary pursuit.
Sure.
Very solitary, to the point where, it can be, you can not know how to play with other people well.
Yes.
Were you playing with other people? Because that's something you do also very well. So was it a thing of like keeping it to yourself and in your room and by yourself?
Play with everybody. Yeah. I would look for every drummer in my community who I knew was into jazz and play duets with them. Okay, then all the bass players, I want to play duets with them. Every gig I could get, playing restaurant gigs, play with my teacher. My teacher, Randy Vincent, was hugely influential in my playing. And Randy and I studied with him from when I was about 8 years old till I was about 12, so 5 years. And I had 2 3-hour lessons a week for 5 years. And so, that was just like sit down, and a lot of that was just playing duets. Wow. And as we know, playing duets it's the best training, because it really is a conversation, and it's about supporting the other person, and can I be there for this person who I revere and respect? It's kind of terrifying but wonderful. So I do come from a tradition of learning which is very experiential. You play with people, you find out what didn't work, you go home. You take your vitamins and you come back. That's kind of the deal. But I played so much with drummer. I was always looking for that. Like I understood that I wanted to be a guitar player that was empathetic to other instruments. Because just because I can do it doesn't mean it's in the best interest of the band.
Right.
And everybody else has to deal with the same thing too. But somehow guitar education, you have to kind of be reminded extra.
Absolutely. Just because the culture around it.
There's a culture around it that is a little bit of this top dog. Everyone caters to that. And we all know that's not really the case. And the best players do it all. We were talking about Keith Richards earlier. And it's like Keith has that thing where there's nothing more compelling than watching him and hearing him play. And when you hear him play, everyone else sounds better while he's playing. And that's the magic trick that I'm obsessed with. How do you lift the band? That's what Duke Ellington was doing. That's what Count Basie, that's what everyone's really doing, to me.
Well, and I feel like, so on your new record, Speak to Me, that I alluded to earlier, how great it was, there's songs on there like Omission, which of omit much of a song about it. And it feel like just pure groove. In a way.
It is.
It's almost Keith Richards style in a sense.
Yeah, I'm the rhythm guitar player for that track. And there's a melody embedded, but it's subliminal. It's totally baked into the center. Yeah. That's a cool example of that.
How does that go?
Let me see if I played it. So That's the sentiment. That's the whole tune, Mm-hmm. It's cool, isn't it? It's really cool.
It's really it feels really good.
It feels really good. So I haven't, I eat humble pie on that one. That was the A section of a longer song, and I'd written it. in kind of a writing sprint. I was writing all these tunes and, you know, like dozens and dozens, pencil and paper kind of style. Just write one, throw it over. And then I threw it out because it wasn't done. And then Joe Henry, who produced the record, this was on the last day of the recording. I was driving into the session with Margaret and I was saying, you know, there was that song that's not finished and it's probably a bad idea for me to try to finish this song right now, isn't it? And she was like, well, no, it just, you have other things on your plate. You have to finish the record. I don't think you need more. And so I showed Joe when we got there and I said, well, here's the first part and it needs the next part. And as, you know, from a place of such clarity and experience, Joe said, how about you don't finish it and you just loop that? And I said, sure, you know, great, I'm off the hook. And it was beautiful because I realized that, yeah, I think, at least to me, what I get excited about with that song is the real drama reveals itself once you've gotten into this kind of tantric thing.
Yeah.
It needs time to get you kind of worked up.
Yeah.
And had I committed to my stipulation that, no, I insist there's more to be written, it just would have been a different drama, you know, and I'm so glad it wasn't that. There's also something very kinesthetically, physically pleasing about playing a song where, you know, I'm not trying to play just a single note. I can kind of throw my weight into the rhythm and the strumming and the Richie Havens ode that all things are. And so yeah, that's kind of
There's a bit of Richie to that song.
Yeah.
You say that, yeah.
Jim Hall used to love Richie Havens. He would talk about him a lot. You know,
Really?
because Jim Hall, I can't do it. I mean, you know, Jim had this kind. I wish I could do it like him, and he'd do it with a lighter pick, but I would ask him about it. He's oh, Richie Havens. It's all Richie Havens.
Wow.
You know, he's like, of course.
What was Richie Havens? Was it like an open E tuning?
I think so. It was
Yeah.
some sort of open tuning that he could, you know, then access with his thumb, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if I got the sense he used. Well, I shouldn't speculate. That's not my area, but I'm not sure how he held a pick.
Yeah.
But it was lighter than this one, is my guess.
Yeah.
But so that's part of the joy of it, I guess.
Did you have a second section in mind for that song?
I did. I don't remember it now. Probably because it wasn't terribly compelling.
It wasn't worth remembering.
No, I remember talking to John Zorn about that. You know, and I was working on something just like that. And I said, I just can't seem to recall it because it's not coming together. And he was the one who gave me permission. He said, you can say it's not good and just drop it. You don't have to be a hero and like make it work.
Save it, yeah.
He said it in a way that was so sweet. It wasn't. You just kind of don't make it about you not being good. He's just like, it's just not killing. Go do something killing, and then okay, you know, fine. Yes, sir. So yeah, that song came out well, and it was nice because it also parlayed into the band sounding great.
Jorge sounds
amazing.
The bass player.
Ooh, he sounds so good.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that's right. That's what we're going for.
Yeah.
How did you hook up with Jorge?
Oh, that's a cool thing. Very, you know, happenstance. But it's at this point, Jorge Roeder, who I just think is the greatest in the world. You know, we've been playing together 16 years, pretty consistently. And we met at Stanford Jazz Workshop, and I was teaching, and he was visiting a friend, and we got put in a room, a coat closet, basically, because Peter Bernstein was there that day, and we were all in awe of Peter, you know, as I still am, and they said, oh, get a rhythm, get everyone, we're going to play a session. And it was me and our friend Ben Roseth, Jorge, and Peter. And we just hit it off, played, it felt great. And so we would play duets. We started a band. Then Jorge joined Gary Burton's band. And then Jorge became part of my trio. He was always a part of it, but he became part of this new configuration. And then he became a part of Nels Klein's band that we did for Blue Note, that record. After we recorded with Scott, but then we went on tour.
Nels band with you.
Nels with me. Yeah, no, I was with it. So it was Nels Klein 4.
Okay.
And then Jorge and I both kind of joined Zorn's world. And then we became a part of the new Masada Quartet. So, and apart from us just being completely connected, we've shared a lot of our musical development together. There's no one else I've been through so many projects with. By my side, and it's pretty remarkable. You know?
But you knew from the beginning that
I knew from the beginning
the time in the same place.
I felt safe. You know, I think safety is a big thing where you feel like you can kind of go for something and know that someone's got your back. But also, I think another part of it with Jorge is that we touch the string differently, but kind of similarly. We obviously him with a double bass, me with a guitar, but I do think we share a similar belief that we deal with obstacles kind of similarly. There's kind of a the only, and I don't know, I could be wrong, but I think we both see any kind of virtuosity as a means towards emotional expression. So it's like what I was talking about before. You develop these skills. Him on the bass is unbelievably great, and yet you're never hit with anything other than the emotional impact first. And then as a dressing, you go, oh my God, and how did he do that? But I think just that shared kind of aesthetic has kind of carried, you can be daring, you can be amazing, you can be virtuosos, you can be fast, you can be, you can be Evel Knievel. But you always go, I think I love most about Jorge is that he'll always go for the attempt. And he lands it. But that exhilaration is so seductive.
Wow.
And I'm not saying on fast music, it can be on a ballad, but there's the sense that we're gonna jump off the cliff. And I don't know if the parachute's gonna open. And so it's been nice to have that energy follow us through all these projects.
Do you ever write with him?
Not really. No? It's kind of understood that that's not our domain. But I should say this. I do write with him in the sense that I will write 30 songs, 40 songs, just a bunch of stuff. And then the first place I go is to his house and we play them all. And we see how it hits us. And he's a massive part of the music you hear because of that. So he's a part of the editing. He's part of the sequencing of the records. He's a part of everything. Jorge is integral. And there are things we have definitely co-written, but I think in all fairness, anything we've ever recorded together, mine is he deserves credit for it sounding the way it is on a compositional level. But it's usually not because we started together.
Well, one of the tunes on your new record that sounds like virtuosic, if that's a word, but again, kind of like Omission, just has a great feel to it, is Vanishing Points.
Oh, yeah, that's this one. This one. I'll just play a little bit. And then the theme is... That's the architecture.
Oh.
You brought that up.
How do you even write something like that, man? I don't even...
I don't know. I'm trying to remember that one. To me, that's such an ode to Carla Bley. It kind of feels like a Liberation Music Orchestra song. There's something blunt about this parallel movement. It's almost, it's like, it's so... It's just so, I don't know what it is, normal in a way. It's not terribly clever. It's just, this sounds cool. Bam, 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 bam. And there's something about it where I think it's juxtaposed with this very elegant, almost kind of folkloric sounding melody. And I think when I say folklore, I think of it even as reminds me of certain Italian music, certain Jewish music, certain, that's whatever, that's my projection. And a tune like that, it's very hard to stop writing, because for me, it's like, well, it's not in time. There's not really a progression that we blow over. And so that's a tune that, I kept putting at the bottom of the pile. I wouldn't really show it to anyone because what do you tell anyone to do on that? I seem to have it covered and it does this thing emotionally and I don't really have any more directives. So, but as I showed it to Dave King and Jorge Roeder, my trio, they pointed out what I think is obvious. Now, of course there's something to do. I'm just not dictating their part.
Yeah.
It's a very inviting tune. And, but that parallel motion, that's all that, I just keep coming back to Stravinsky, all these things in Bartok. There's these movements, and how you use it is everything. But
did that just burst out of you in one sitting, or did you go a section at a time?
I want to say that it was kind of a combination of both. It was an improvisation, probably. That I'm pretty fastidious about writing things on a big piece of manuscript paper. And when doing that, you see these kind of, the sections are just laid out like a storyboard. And so I remember with that one, kind of moving them around a lot. Is this the beginning? Or do we save that? Is this the first thing that happens? Is this the first thing? So I just remember kind of putting them in different orders until it got a trajectory. But I improvise a lot and record it and then transcribe it. That's a big thing. I will. And with this record, I was really on a Cy Twombly kick. I was looking at a lot of Cy Twombly art, and he's one of my father's favorite artists. And I had this book of my father's, and I was looking at it, and so I would spend a lot of time looking at an image, improvising, recording it, and then going back and kind of seeing if anything emerged. There's a tune on the record called 2 and 1. So yeah. And that's an improvisation. And I write it down. And it's, what's interesting to me is that I don't think writing down makes it more significant. You can write down a piece of garbage, too, and you just go, oh, that was a lot of work for nothing. But there is something noticeable in that tune and listening back where I thought that wouldn't have occurred to me to pace something that way if I was looking at a piece of paper, and then you write it down and it looked, to me, I looked at the chart the other day and it still looks like something I never would have written.
Wow.
And that's so cool, But it takes time to say, no, I'm going to write everything and kind of.
How long are you improvising before something like that comes out?
Well, I suppose it depends. That wasn't terribly long. Not long. Probably as long as it took to just play and then stop. So a minute, But I improvise in those chunks a lot for that reason. I believe that, one of the great lessons I learned was from Alaudin Matthew, W.A. Matthew, a wonderful composer who I studied with only once as a kid. And he wrote a bunch of very important books. The short version of the story is that at an early age when I studied with him, he encouraged me to improvise 1-minute compositions a lot.
Wow.
And here's the quick version of it because it's quite expansive. But I came to him and I said, I'm trying to develop my voice and understand how to be a composer. And he said, well, here's what you do is you improvise a song. So you're not just playing around. You're trying to, at 30 seconds, you're at the middle. At 45 seconds, you're near the end. He said, I want you to do this with a timer and a recorder. That was before iPhone. So I did. Now he said, I want you to do 10 of these a day for a week and don't listen to them until the week is up. And I said, well, anything else? He said, no, just try to create a narrative, and do not listen to them. At the end of the week, you have 70 minutes. It's like a stop time, it's like stop animation or something. Yeah. 70 minutes of you improvising compositionally. And he said, I want you to listen to that and basically make 2 lists. On one list, write down everything you notice about it. And on the other side of the list, everything you'd like to develop or further. And man, the first time I did this, I think I saved up 12 days worth or 14 days. I had 140 minutes of me playing solo guitar, which was, I never would have done at that time if I hadn't done it 1 minute at a time. What I thought was cool about it was I heard trends. You hear trends in your music. I was playing all these D major chords and I was playing all this country music. I thought I was a bebopper, man. I didn't know what was going on. I was playing all these like languid stuff that I didn't relate to.
Yeah.
But it didn't lie. I had, here I was. And that got me thinking that every time you improvise, you are kind of stating your language. It's not like I'm going to wiggle around until something happens. You are you. So just kind of start, and that I think that makes it so it's less of a, you just be yourself on record.
How did you respond to that information? Was it lean into the D majors and the country sound?
Well, that started that kind of pushed me into all the stuff I was doing in my own music that was probably more Americana leaning. Mm-hmm. I didn't feel as bad about using open strings. I didn't feel all those tropes. I was just like, holy cow, I'm this kid from California who grew up around this music. Of course that's what comes out. I just was blind to it. So I endorsed it. I reinforced it. I wrote that way, and I started a band around this old quintet. I started playing with Chris Eldridge. I started playing with Chris Thiele. So it was good. Isn't that interesting? So anyway, so all to say, when you're in front, I think I don't know. I don't know. It's probably the earliest.
Did you walk away with songs?
So many songs. Yeah. So many songs. It's just a matter of kind of picking them out. Oh, that's this thing, or a lot of that. And I did another big batch of that. I did this for years. 5 years of this straight. Led to a solo record I made called World's Fair. And that was all improvisations, basically, that I just like took out and then put on.
Wow.
Wrote down.
Do you still do it ever?
I do it a lot less systematically.
Yeah.
I wasn't feeling well recently for a little while, and then I kind of got my strength back to play. And all I do is I just sit in my room and I improvise these things and I record them, and it's great. It's really healing to do it. So and some songs are growing out of it already. So it's kind of cool,
Tell me one more time.
Yeah. Okay.
10?
Okay, set the timer. It's my favorite thing in the world. You're going to set a timer. Let's just say for ease, we'll say voice memo, app. You press start. You begin playing, and you begin playing as if it's a song that but you're just playing it now, right? It's kind of make believe. You want to keep your eye on the clock because at about 30 seconds, this is your last exit, before you're at. So if you want anything to change, you can do it there. At about 45, 50 seconds, you want to be conscientiously trying to bring it in for a landing. You don't want the buzzer to go off and be startled. And you would do this 10 times a day, but not one after another.
Right.
So maybe you do it, then you go do something, come back, do another, do it. You are actively trying to get a snapshot. It's getting like your blood work done musically. You're trying to get your labs done. And you do, but you just don't open it up till the end. And when you listen to it, you put it in iTunes or something so you can listen to it uninterrupted.
Yeah.
Until you forget where the minute started and where it ended, and you do it on shuffle, things like that. Isn't that cool?
That is pretty.
If you pick up a different guitar, there's a whole other thing happen?
Absolutely. Well, it's funny you say that, Don. I feel like my brain is between the electric world and the acoustic world. Mm-hmm. And within that, there's varieties. But the touch it's different between the two instruments. And I feel, I'm humbled that by the instrument, I need to just play what the guitar sounds good doing. Mm-hmm. Having said that, I tend to rotate only between a couple. Mostly with guitars that are in tune, so that at least I have a pitch. Yeah. I don't play much with effects or anything, but I know that's another world that would probably be quite stimulating if I just wanted to explore it.
When you're at home and you pick up a guitar, do you just pick one up instinctually, whether it's acoustic or electric, or do you often purposefully pick?
Whichever one I can reach from my chair.
Okay.
It's kind of that's my instinct. This one was out. This acoustic that I'm holding was out, so I've been playing it more. But there was about a month where I was too lazy to get my main Telecaster that I play all the time from the closet, and so I was playing this other one, and it's set up very differently, and it was really inspiring to play that. I really, really believe that so much education about playing comes from the instrument. Not to say, just for clarity's sake, that you need an expensive guitar to learn how to be a great player. But, it's not about me bringing my skills to an instrument. It's really about modifying them so that the instrument resonates. I picked up a guitar last night. I never really play lately. It was too far away from my reach, as I said before. And Margaret was working in the kitchen there, and we were just hanging out. It was so lovely. And I got out this old tweed champ that I used to play religiously, and now it just sits next to the tree in the corner. As I'm going to play, and I plugged it in, and I sounded bad on it. I just couldn't get a sound. Everything I played sounded like I had, boxing gloves on. I was just but over the course of about 30 minutes, it got better. And by the end, I was playing. It sounded so good. I'm telling you, because I just chilled out. I touched it the way the guitar wanted to be played, and not the way I wanted to play it.
Yeah.
And I just said, thanks. That was what a lesson. And I put it down. And
it's so interesting. That's the opposite sometimes. I mean, I guess going back to sort of the lineage you get into when you pick up a guitar.
Sure.
There's these icons. The stories you hear is like Hendrix beating a guitar into submission, a guitar he had never used, and it's
totally
it's right-handed, but he's left-handed, and he's just gonna make it work, and it's like, but it's gonna, but this is not wrong. It's just different. It's rather
it's just different.
The submission. I'm gonna meet it where it's at. That guitar.
Well, that just happens to be my interest. I don't think it's right for necessarily, obviously not for everybody, but there's I think also just a point of clarity too, because you make a great point. It's not to to take myself out of the equation and say I'm just trying to make the guitar sound great. I'm a big part of it, but as far as the marriage of the two, so you're not doing it from a place of I'm no good, and as long as the guitar sounds good, it's going to be good. I understand that it's a dialogue between the forces. That's all, and I need to be present for what's coming back. And it's funny because we're talking about drummers, bass players, piano players. All these are instrumentalists who play instruments that aren't their own a lot. This is not a novel concept. It's not the. I remember I was starting to do this on some of these shows with Zorn, where we fly into someplace for a day and then fly home and can't bring all the equipment. So I just use backline guitars, acoustic, electric. It doesn't really matter. And I remember doing it, and it was so liberating because I started to notice that you don't need a great instrument to leave space. You don't, and if my main contribution in these bands is what I don't play, and then it doesn't have to be my guitar. So all of these things I just want to keep coming back to that just for myself, is it's always in service of what the musical act is. And it's really, none of it really matters. You just want to be present. But from a guitar playing point of view, from just being, getting better at it, and I like rotating just so I don't get too comfortable. If I feel really good on one, I will pick up another to see if my skills translate. Or if it was just because of that one, that the strings are just perfectly dead, and that's why it sounds good,
Will you switch positions from night to night on the same song?
Oh, completely. I'm kind of into, like, any melody. I don't know how to exemplify it, but I'm a believer of, if I've seen my left hand down here a lot on this song one night, the next night I want to see it up here more, and then I want to see it in the middle, and just because it'll get me into more problems, and then I can get out of them, and there's a little bit of a masochistic element to it. Don't be too comfortable. Yeah.
When you were showing us all the different C's before,
yeah.
So on my bass anyway, they all have different personalities.
1,000%. They are. Yeah. They're there. Yeah. And then within that you have where on the string, at least in my case on the right hand, I play it. I notice a difference between, and then if I move my hand towards the fretboard, and then as volume goes down, that's my favorite, is what happens when you get quiet enough is. So in some way it got louder because we all listened, but I played quieter. And to play quieter, a big thing for me with shifting of timbre has a lot to do with velocity. If you want something louder, you move through the string faster. If you want to play it quieter, you move through it slower. We're talking incrementally. But that modulation of playing a fast line but moving through the strings slowly, that's when you get these kind of things that are kind of ephemeral, and that's very different than I'm actually moving the tempo of the line's the same, but I'm moving way faster through it. And and so those interplays I'm obsessed with string instruments, and the fact that this allows me to say my biggest pet peeve, which is that I feel like there's sometimes there's sometimes a belief, especially in guitar pedagogy, that the strings should sound the same. They should. You should have evenness.
Right.
And there's a time in my life where I hunted that down. I want everything to be even, so you don't. And I increasingly, I just love that they are not the same. No two notes are the same. We were playing in Ljubljana in Europe with John Zorn's band. This is like a month ago. And like, okay, we have an hour and 75-minute set. First song, my high E string just pops off. It's like, okay, great. And I'm sitting there, and I know no one else noticed it. And I know no one else really cares, too. And it was, so I'm going to play a 5-string set. This is great. I've always wanted to, you know. And it was so slamming, because without this, the E, the duplicate, and they're hardly duplicates since they're 2 octaves apart, but it just was, I just loved it. And it forced me into all these other areas. And timbrally, I didn't have access to that thing, that kind of crisp thing. So you're, you know, and I don't know. So I
did it get you in trouble at any point through the night or no?
Nope. I was fine. I got out fine.
Yeah.
If you asked me to do it again, I would be screwed, because I kind of figured out some ways, and then I just, that was it. But yeah, timbre on an instrument is beautiful, and on the guitar especially, and I think the bass too. That's something Jorge is very cognizant of. Mm-hmm. He can deal with, especially with walking lines and different registers, and when the song needs it, he'll go, you know, things will get intense, and he'll move higher, but on the low strings, so that there's room for me to kind of thunder around in the basement, so to speak, you know, and then we'll switch places. But what strings you play things on, that's everything on the guitar for me.
Yeah. We were talking before we started this, and then I cut it off because I wanted to talk about it. And it kind of ties into the same thing. We're talking about the abandonment of set lists.
Yes.
Let's talk about the gig you did with Joey.
You dig this. We were on, this was not terribly long ago, 3 months ago, 4 months ago. The band was myself and Jorge Roeder and Joey Barron, the greatest, you know, drummer. I have such love and respect for Joey, and I always have. And so to play together is a real dream, you know? And so Jorge and I know our whole repertoire. We know all the songs, and we're cognizant that to bring Joey into the fold, we're not going to send him okay, here's a binder, learn all this stuff and do what? No. We're coming to you. We'll meet in the middle. And so my first thought was, okay, we'll play standards, we'll play blue, things that he knows. But as we got to the sound check part of the day and we're playing, I'm realizing that Joey is so present. And everything Jorge and I start to play, of like, well, maybe we could show him this. Within 10 seconds, he's playing what is I would consider the perfect part to it. And he said, Joey, how'd you know to do it? He said, I don't. I'm just listening. I'm just listening to you. I thought, okay, we're in the deep end. We got to really savor this. So I said, well, okay, I'll write up a set list. And this is the only time in the whole day Joey says, well, can I just say something? You know, of course. Joey, he says, would you be averse to no set list? And I said, well, it would, no, I've always kind of wanted to do that, but I'm afraid. And he said, well, let's just see what happens, right? So we go out on stage, and for the only time in recent history I remember being shaky. You know, I was like a packed room in Portland, Oregon, and I was just like, oh no. And okay, I said I would do it. I'm going to do it. And so we go out, and I just really listened to the room. Okay, where are we? And it kind of went against everything that I would typically do, but I said, we're going to play You and the Night and the Music kind of fast, which I would never go to that. Okay, we did. Joey, amazing. Okay, killer. Next song, I'm going to start this old one I haven't played in 15 years, but I know Jorge knows it. Bam, cool. And though I was still scared the whole time, when it was all over, I felt this relief of, I think that was one of the most honest things I could have offered, and that we could have offered. And it also leveled the playing field in a way where it wasn't like, we know my tunes, you're sitting. It was, we have a life of music, we can respond, it's going to be cool. And I haven't looked back since. Every show we did, we just did a whole tour, whole European tour, and a different set every night. And with Dave and Jorge, Don, I love it. I love it. You just start playing. It also, I think it also invites a real consideration of tempos. Not like I said I would play the song third, so I'm going to play it, but like, where's the room at? Where's my energy at with this? And I think that's a really important thing to consider, because you have to occupy that space for the next 5, 10, 15, however long your song is. I felt so much happier every night. I felt so much more at ease, less strenuous. I wasn't trying to shove something into, you know. So anyway, it got me thinking differently. But I think it holds hands with the music I like to play to begin with.
Do you start thinking about what the next song will be before you end the other one? Or?
You know, I think it does occur that, hey, we're here and this something will pop into my mind. But I don't hold to it too tightly. You know, there was a couple times where, middle of the song, I know exactly what's going to come next. And then the song ends and you hear the applause and you look around and you go, I was wrong. You know? Got it.
That's one of my favorite things about seeing Neil Young is same thing, no set list. And so it's always like, what's the first song going to be? And sometimes it's like a 20-minute version of Like an Inca and like half the audience disappears.
Well, that's where he's at, you know?
Awesome.
Well, with Don and I was speaking to that very point. Like I would imagine Neil Young is Neil Young. You're going to get a hit of him on that day, and that's the gift. That's a great gift. We were speaking earlier about the time I've been playing with Joe Lovano recently, and we were talking a lot about, I guess you would call it harmolodics is a way to say it, from Ornette Coleman's world. But here's the distillation, is that at any given moment as players, we have access to all tempos. You can play faster, you can play slower. You have access to all keys, no matter what the key of the song is.
Yeah.
But there are these matrices where you can, I think all my favorite improvisers, someone like Paul Bley, can kind of slip between these dimensions. You know, Keith can do that. Keith Cherry, obviously Ornette, Don Cherry, Charlie could do that. And I think I'm at a place in my own development where I'm just fascinated by what is actually the song. Okay, we're in the song, but within that, I have freedom. And I want to exhibit that, and I want to challenge it. And I learn a lot doing that. So you can kind of drop what you were saying before. We can drop the needle anywhere. But once you're in the good stuff. Don't worry, you know, it's going to be, you're off. There's an offering at play. Always.
If you're open to it, would you mind playing something? Yeah.
I was thinking about this. Yeah, I'll play you Northern Shuffle.
Oh, I was going to ask. I was going to ask about that.
Right. I can keep it short too. I don't know how long I want to do it.
Do as long as it feels right. Please.
Here we go then.
Whoa.
That's a real different version of that.
It's different.
Well, it's amazing. Like that lick you do, like that's like on the record. It sounds almost like a Mark Bolan T-Rex kind of group. That's a choice. Like I don't know that anybody else but you would make, but it sounds so amazing on it.
You have such a distinctive character and personality. It's unmistakable, man.
Thanks, man.
You could hearing that is as good as like a DNA test identifier, man.
You're not the
Dig that.
And that's the highest praise I could offer somebody, man. You know,
thank you.
it's unlike anybody else. I understand that you listen to stuff and understand the fundamentals of the instrument, but you take it someplace where no one else goes, and it just it's thrilling, man. It's beautiful.
That means so much to me. Thank you. Thank you both. Really.
I was sort of laughing listening to that too, because a couple of days before I came out here, I was listening to you play solo acoustic on something.
Yeah.
And I usually play acoustic just in my office, just by myself. And it was all of a sudden my kids popped in. They're like, "We thought you got really good on us."
You're like, yes, I did.
And they're like, "Oh, one day."
That's so cute. That's the
man.
best.
Thank you, Julian.
Hey, thank you.
Appreciate you,
It's
man.
a pleasure to be here. Pleasure to be with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Blue Note.
Thank you, Blue
The
Note.
label, the club,
Yeah.
Don.
Yeah.
Thanks for checking out Broken Record on YouTube. If you want to listen to us on the go, be sure to subscribe to Broken Record wherever you listen to podcasts.